In the early years of her life, the woman believed she had discovered the rarest treasure a human being could possess: certainty. Her home stood on a quiet street where the mornings arrived gently, announced by birdsong and soft sunlight slipping through linen curtains. The walls of the house were warm with familiarity, holding echoes of laughter, shared meals, and unspoken understandings. Every object had its place. Every routine had its rhythm. To her, this order felt natural, deserved, and permanent. She woke each morning before the rest of the household, moving softly so as not to disturb the peace she cherished. The kettle was always first, then the slow ritual of preparing breakfast. These small acts grounded her. They reassured her that life was functioning as it should. Outside, the world might be uncertain, but inside these walls, everything felt protected. Her family was the center of this stability. Her partner's presence was constant and dependable, like the steady trunk of an old tree. Their conversations were familiar, sometimes repetitive, yet comforting. Their shared plans stretched far into the future. Vacations not yet taken, milestones not yet reached, years assumed to be waiting patiently ahead. Their children moved through the house with careless joy, unaware of how fragile such moments were. Their laughter filled the rooms, and she believed it always would. She took pride in being the keeper of this life, not out of vanity, but out of devotion. She believed that love, when carefully maintained, could last forever. That effort, responsibility, and planning were shields against loss. She believed that if one did everything correctly, life would respond with loyalty. Her financial security strengthened this belief. The family lacked nothing essential, and many things were abundant. Bills were paid without anxiety. Savings grew steadily. The future felt manageable, predictable, almost guaranteed. She often thought of hardship as something belonging to other people, other stories. Misfortune existed, of course, but at a respectful distance. It visited the news, not her doorstep. In her community, she was admired. People spoke of her with quiet respect. She was known as capable, organized, reliable, someone who had built a good life. These words settled into her identity like bricks in a foundation. She did not question them. She accepted them as truth. Yet beneath this apparent peace, invisible threads of attachment quietly tightened. She rarely noticed them. They did not feel like chains. They felt like love, responsibility, success, and purpose. She told herself that everything she cared about was worth holding on to. What she did not realize was that the tighter she held, the more fragile her world became. She believed her happiness was earned and therefore secure. That because she had worked hard, loved sincerely, and behaved responsibly, life owed her continuity. She had unknowingly made a contract with existence, one that promised safety in exchange for effort. And because this contract had not yet been broken, she trusted it completely. When she observed suffering in others, she felt sympathy, but also distance. How unfortunate, she would think. How sudden, how unfair. But somewhere deep inside, there was an unspoken belief. This will not happen to me. The Buddha once taught that all conditioned things are impermanent, but such wisdom rarely reaches those who feel stable. When life flows smoothly, impermanence feels like a concept, not a reality. The woman had heard of loss, change, and death, but they belonged to philosophy, religion, or distant tragedy. They had not yet entered her body, her breath, her daily experience. In the evenings, she would sit quietly after her family had gone to sleep, scrolling through messages, organizing plans, reviewing finances, or simply enjoying the silence. These moments felt earned. She would look around the house and feel gratitude, mixed subtly with pride. She believed she was standing on solid ground. Yet even in those quiet moments, fear sometimes flickered at the edges of her mind. A brief thought, what if this disappears? But she dismissed it quickly. Such thoughts felt unnecessary, even ungrateful. She believed that worrying about loss invited it. Instead, she focused on preservation, maintaining harmony, protecting what she had. She worked to keep everyone happy, to keep problems small, to keep discomfort away. She did not realize that this constant effort was not control, but resistance. The house, so full of warmth and life, became more than a place. It became a symbol of permanence. Each photograph on the wall felt like proof that time could be frozen. Each familiar routine reinforced the idea that tomorrow would resemble today. She did not yet see that stability, while comforting, is not the same as truth. Buddhist teachings speak of anicca, impermanence, not as a threat, but as a law of nature. Everything that arises will pass. Everything formed will dissolve. Yet in her life, nothing had yet demanded this understanding. So she continued to live as though permanence were not only possible, but promised. She loved deeply, but her love was tangled with expectation. She trusted life, but her trust depended on conditions. She felt safe, but only because nothing had yet been taken from her. This was the paradox of her peace. It existed because it had not been tested. The house of stability stood firm, built carefully over years of effort, routine, and belief. It appeared strong. It appeared lasting. But like all structures built on assumptions of permanence, it rested on unseen ground that was already shifting, even if no cracks had yet appeared. She did not know that this sense of certainty was not a blessing, but a preparation. Not for protection, but for awakening. For soon, everything she believed to be solid would reveal its true nature. And only then would she begin to understand that stability does not come from what remains unchanged, but from the heart that can remain open when everything changes. If the house was the visible structure of her stability, then her identity was the invisible architecture that held it together. She did not think of herself as someone attached to possessions or status. On the surface, she appeared modest, practical, even generous. She did not chase luxury for its own sake, nor did she measure herself openly against others. Yet beneath this restraint lay a deep and subtle attachment, not to objects themselves, but to what they represented. Her sense of who she was had slowly woven itself around what she owned, what she maintained, and what she provided. She was the woman who managed everything. The one who remembered appointments, balanced finances, organized celebrations, and anticipated needs before they were spoken. Her worth was measured not in words, but in smooth outcomes. When things went well, she felt useful. When nothing went wrong, she felt successful. Each possession in her life carried meaning beyond its material form. The house was not merely shelter. It was proof that she had created safety. The furniture was not simply functional. It reflected years of effort and care. Even the smallest objects, a well-used cooking pot, neatly folded clothes, carefully arranged shelves, felt like extensions of her competence. They reassured her that she was doing life correctly. In Buddhist understanding, attachment often hides behind responsibility. What looks like care can quietly become clinging. The woman's love for her family, while genuine, had fused with her need to be needed. She did not simply love her roles, she became them. She was not just a partner, she was the foundation of the household. Not just a mother, she was the source of order and continuity. Not just a provider, she was the one who ensured nothing fell apart. Without consciously realizing it, she began to fear anything that threatened these identities. Illness, failure, financial instability, or emotional distance felt dangerous, not only because they could cause pain, but because they challenged who she believed herself to be. Her possessions reflected this fear. She maintained them carefully, not out of vanity, but out of a quiet anxiety that disorder signaled vulnerability. A broken appliance, an unpaid bill, or an unexpected expense unsettled her far more than she admitted. These were not just inconveniences, they felt like cracks in her self-image. She rarely rested without purpose. Even moments of relaxation were justified by productivity, recovery, so she could continue giving. Stillness, when it came, often carried guilt. To stop felt like to risk becoming unnecessary. People admired her for her strength, her reliability, her composure. They would say, "She holds everything together." These words were meant as praise, and she received them gratefully. Yet each compliment reinforced a silent belief. If I stop holding, everything will collapse. And so she held tighter. She believed security came from accumulation, not only of wealth, but of proof. Proof that she was valuable. Proof that she was indispensable. Proof that she belonged. Her identity grew outward, anchored in conditions she could point to, count, and maintain. In Buddhist teachings, this is known as upadana, clinging. Not always to material objects, but to roles, views, and self-concepts. The woman did not cling because she was greedy or selfish. She clung because she was afraid of emptiness. The idea of losing her possessions terrified her, but not because she loved comfort. It terrified her because without them, she did not know who she would be. She could not imagine herself without the structure she had built, without the routines, without the responsibilities, without the visible signs that her life mattered. To her, these things were not external, they were her. Even her relationships became mirrors of identity. When her family was happy, she felt successful. When they struggled, she felt she had failed. Their emotional states reflected directly onto her sense of worth. Love became intertwined with outcome. She did not yet see that this way of loving, while sincere, carried a heavy burden. It demanded constant control, constant vigilance, constant effort to preserve a self-image that could never be fully secured. There were moments, rare and fleeting, when she sensed something was off. Late at night, when the house was quiet, she would feel a vague restlessness, a question without words. Is this all I am? But the question frightened her, so she buried it under tasks, plans, and reassurance. Impermanence, though unseen, was already present. Every possession aged. Every role depended on conditions beyond her control. Every relationship changed subtly over time. But because these changes were gradual, she mistook continuity for permanence. The Buddha taught that suffering arises not from loss itself, but from the belief that what is changing should not change. The woman had not yet suffered deeply, but the seeds of suffering were already planted in the way she defined herself. She mistook stability for identity. She believed that to lose what she had was to lose who she was. And so, without knowing it, she lived in quiet fear of the very truth that governs all life. Nothing can be owned, nothing can be held, nothing can remain. Her identity, carefully constructed through years of effort and care, stood like a beautifully furnished room with no foundation beneath it. As long as the ground remained still, the room felt safe. But the ground was never still. She did not yet know that the roles she clung to were not her true self. That beyond possessions, beyond responsibility, beyond identity itself, there existed something deeper, something that could not be lost. But for now, she lived as though everything she loved defined her. And because of that, everything she loved also held the power to destroy her. This was not a flaw in her character. It was a universal human condition. The quiet mistake of believing that what we carry in our hands can tell us who we are. Soon, impermanence would arrive, not as a theory, but as a force. And when it did, it would not take only her possessions. It would take the self she thought she was. And only then would her real journey begin. Control was the final pillar of the woman's sense of certainty. If possessions defined who she was, then control convinced her that what she had could be protected. She did not experience control as rigidity or domination. To her, it felt like responsibility, foresight, and care. She believed that a well-planned life was a safe life. And because planning had served her well so far, she trusted it without question. Her days followed patterns she had carefully designed. Mornings began at the same hour. Meals were prepared according to familiar routines. Finances were tracked, calendars were color-coded, obligations were anticipated weeks in advance. Even moments of rest were scheduled, framed as rewards for diligence. Life, to her, was something that could be organized. This organization gave her comfort. It created the feeling that chaos could be kept at bay if she remained attentive enough. She did not think of herself as controlling others. She thought of herself as preventing problems. And because disasters had not yet struck, her belief appeared justified. She trusted in cause and effect, but in a simplified form. If one worked hard, life would respond with stability. If one behaved ethically, misfortune would pass them by. If one loved deeply, love would endure. These beliefs were not cruel, they were human, but they were incomplete. In Buddhist teaching, karma is often misunderstood as a system of reward and punishment. The woman shared this misunderstanding, though she never named it. She believed life operated like a balance sheet, effort in, safety out. And because her ledger appeared balanced, she felt secure. She planned far into the future. Vacations years ahead, educational paths for her children, financial projections for retirement. These plans were not fantasies. They were reasonable, logical, even admirable. But beneath them lived an assumption she never questioned. I will be here to see these plans fulfilled. Time, to her, was a resource she could allocate. She believed she had enough of it. When unexpected events occurred, minor illnesses, small financial setbacks, emotional disagreements, she responded quickly and efficiently. She adjusted, corrected, repaired. Each successful adjustment reinforced her faith in control. She told herself, "We handled it. We always do." This belief became part of her identity, the one who manages, the one who anticipates, the one who stays calm when others panic. People relied on her, and she accepted this reliance with pride. It made her feel necessary, strong, and safe. Yet control, by its nature, demands constant vigilance. And though she appeared calm on the surface, her mind rarely rested. She scanned for potential threats, calculated risks, prepared responses. Even in moments of joy, part of her attention remained alert. Happiness, for her, was something to be guarded. The Buddha taught that craving for control is a subtle form of attachment. We do not only crave pleasure, we crave predictability. We crave continuity. We crave the illusion that tomorrow will obey today's plans. The woman's suffering had not yet emerged, but the craving was already present. She believed that uncertainty was a failure of preparation, that if something went wrong, someone must have made a mistake. Often, she assumed that someone was herself. This belief placed an enormous burden on her shoulders, though she rarely acknowledged it. She did not allow herself to imagine catastrophe, not because she was brave, but because she believed imagining loss might summon it. And so she avoided thoughts of death, collapse, or radical change. These belonged to other lives, other stories, not hers. When she heard about sudden tragedies, accidents, illnesses, natural disasters, she felt a momentary chill, followed by relief that it was not her reality. She reassured herself with quiet explanations. They were unlucky. They didn't see it coming. They didn't plan well enough. These thoughts were not judgments. They were defenses. They protected her illusion. Control also shaped how she related to her emotions. She believed feelings should be managed, moderated, kept productive. Grief, anger, and fear were acknowledged briefly, then quickly redirected. Lingering in discomfort felt dangerous. Emotions, like everything else, were problems to be solved. She did not realize that this avoidance weakened her inner resilience. By refusing to sit with uncertainty, she denied herself the opportunity to build true stability, the kind that does not depend on outcomes. In Buddhist wisdom, true freedom arises not from controlling life, but from understanding its uncontrollable nature. The woman, however, had not yet encountered this truth in a way that pierced her beliefs. Life had not yet demanded surrender, and so she continued to believe she was steering. Her life, from the outside, looked solid and successful. From the inside, it was carefully balanced, like a tower of stones stacked through attention and effort. As long as her hands remained steady, the structure stood. What she did not see was that the ground beneath the tower was not hers to command. Change does not announce itself. Impermanence does not ask permission. It arrives quietly, often invisibly, until suddenly it is everywhere. The woman lived with the deep assumption that control equaled safety, that awareness equaled mastery, that preparedness equaled immunity. These assumptions gave her confidence, but they also made her fragile. Because the moment control is revealed as an illusion, everything built upon it begins to tremble. She was not wrong to plan. She was not wrong to care. She was not wrong to be responsible. But she had mistaken skill for sovereignty. She believed she governed life, when in truth, she was only moving within it. Soon, circumstances would arise that no amount of planning could prevent. Events that would not respond to effort or intention. Loss that could not be negotiated. And when that moment came, the illusion of control would collapse, not to punish her, but to reveal a deeper truth. That life was never meant to be controlled, only lived, only understood, only released. And with that release would come not destruction, but the beginning of real freedom. The day everything collapsed did not arrive with thunder or warning. It began like any other morning, quiet, ordinary, almost gentle. The woman followed her familiar routine, moving through the house with practiced ease. Breakfast was prepared. Messages were checked. Plans for the day unfolded in her mind like a well-rehearsed script. Nothing felt different. Nothing hinted at what was coming. Impermanence rarely announces itself. It slips in through moments that feel entirely normal. The first disruption was small. A phone call that came earlier than expected. A pause on the other end of the line that lasted a fraction of a second too long. In that pause, something shifted, though she could not yet name it. Her body sensed it before her mind did. A tightening in the chest. A subtle dizziness. A quiet instinct whispering, "This is not ordinary." Words followed. Fragmented. Careful. Heavy. There had been an accident. Or an illness that progressed too quickly. Or a betrayal that unraveled everything at once. The details blurred together, refusing to form a coherent picture. She heard the words, but they did not land. They floated around her like foreign objects, unreal and weightless. Her first response was denial, not loud or dramatic, but calm and logical. There must be a misunderstanding, a mistake, something missing. Life did not simply shatter without reason. Not hers. Not today. She asked questions, clarified facts, repeated sentences back to the speaker, as if accuracy alone could undo reality. Control reached for one last breath, but reality did not respond. By the time she arrived at the place where everything had already changed, a hospital corridor, a police station, an empty room, the truth began to press against her senses. The air felt heavier. Time slowed unnaturally. Sounds became distant and distorted, as though she were underwater. Then she saw it, or heard it, or felt it, and the world she knew ceased to exist. Loss did not arrive gently. It did not explain itself. It did not wait for her readiness. It tore through her life with a finality that left no space for negotiation. The people she loved were gone, or unreachable, or irrevocably changed. The future she had planned dissolved instantly, like mist in sunlight. Her mind fractured under the weight of what it could not accept. This cannot be happening. This does not belong to my life. There must be a way to fix this. But there was no fixing, only aftermath. Hours passed without her noticing, or perhaps minutes stretched into eternity. She moved mechanically, responding to instructions, signing papers, answering questions she did not remember being asked. Her body functioned on instinct while her consciousness retreated somewhere distant, unwilling to witness the full truth. When she returned home, the house greeted her with unbearable familiarity. Shoes still by the door, dishes waiting to be washed, the quiet hum of appliances continuing their duties as though nothing had happened. The normality was cruel. Every object became a reminder of what no longer existed. This was when the second collapse began. Not only had she lost her family, but the structure that supported her life began to unravel with frightening speed. Medical bills, legal documents, financial accounts suddenly frozen or inaccessible. Income streams disrupted. Plans rendered meaningless. Security vanished as quickly as certainty had once appeared. She realized, with horror, how much her life had depended on conditions she could no longer control. The safety she believed she had built was not a fortress. It was a fragile arrangement that required constant cooperation from the world. Now the world had withdrawn its consent. In Buddhist teachings, this moment is known as dukkha, not simply pain, but the deep suffering that arises when reality collides with expectation. The woman did not yet know this word, but she was living its truth completely. She felt hollowed out, as though something essential had been torn from her chest, leaving an emptiness that echoed with disbelief. Grief did not come in waves. It came as a void, a numbness so profound it frightened her. She waited for emotion to arrive, for tears, screams, collapse, but instead there was only silence. The mind protects itself when pain exceeds comprehension. It shuts down sensation. It delays suffering. At night, sleep refused to come. When it did, it brought images that felt more real than waking life. She would reach for those she had lost, only to wake again to absence. Each awakening was a fresh injury. Days blurred together. Friends came and went, offering words that fell apart before they reached her. "I'm so sorry. You're strong. Time will heal." None of it entered. Language had lost its meaning. What frightened her most was not the pain, but the collapse of belief. She had believed life was fair. That effort mattered. That love protected. That planning ensured continuity. In a single moment, every one of these beliefs had been shattered. And without them, she felt exposed to a universe that no longer made sense. She began to ask questions that had never arisen before. Why live if everything can vanish? What is the point of building anything at all? How can a world that allows this be trusted? These questions did not seek answers. They were expressions of despair. She felt betrayed, not only by life, but by herself, by the assumptions she had trusted, by the illusion she had mistaken for truth. Control, which once felt like safety, now felt like a cruel joke. She realized, dimly, that no amount of preparation could have prevented this day, that no vigilance could have stopped what had occurred, that some forces exist entirely beyond human command. This realization did not bring wisdom yet. It brought terror, because if life could not be controlled, then nothing was secure. And if nothing was secure, then how could one continue? The Buddha taught that suffering is inevitable when we cling to what must change. But in this moment, theory meant nothing. The woman was not learning a lesson. She was being dismantled. Her identity collapsed alongside her circumstances. Without her family, without her role, without her stability, she no longer recognized herself. She felt erased, as though the person she had been no longer existed. The day the world fell apart did not end when the sun set. It extended into every hour that followed. It reshaped time itself. There was no before and after, only a dividing line she could never cross back over. Yet within this devastation, unseen and unrecognized, something else had begun. The destruction of illusion, the breaking of certainty, the forced encounter with impermanence, not as an idea, but as a lived reality. She did not yet know it, but this collapse, as unbearable as it was, marked the beginning of her awakening. Not a gentle awakening, not a chosen one, but a necessary one. Because only when everything she relied upon was taken away could she begin to discover what, if anything, remained. After the day the world fell apart, time lost its familiar shape. Morning no longer arrived with purpose. Night no longer offered rest. Days passed, but they did not move forward. They circled endlessly around the same center of pain, like a wound that refused to close. Grief settled into her body in ways she did not recognize at first. It was not only sorrow, it was disorientation. The feeling of standing on ground that no longer existed. Everything she had leaned on, love, routine, belief, identity, had vanished. And without them, she felt suspended in a vast, empty space. She woke each day with the same question pressing against her chest. How is this real? The mind, desperate for meaning, searched for something to blame. Fate, God, circumstance, herself, anyone or anything that could explain why this had happened. Anger surged where numbness once lived, sharp and consuming. Why them? Why now? Why after everything I did right? She replayed memories endlessly, searching for moments where a different choice might have changed the outcome. A phone call that could have been made sooner. A warning sign that should have been noticed. A decision that now felt unforgivable. Guilt wrapped itself around grief, tightening until she could barely breathe. In Buddhist understanding, this is the second arrow of suffering. The first arrow is the pain itself, the loss, the trauma, the injury. The second arrow is the mind's resistance to pain, blame, regret, and the desperate demand that reality be different. The woman had been struck by both, though she knew neither their names nor their nature. Her suffering deepened because she could not accept what had happened. Acceptance felt like betrayal. If she accepted reality, did that mean she approved of it? Did it mean she was letting go of those she had lost? The thought was unbearable, so she fought reality instead. She argued with the past. She imagined impossible reversals. She clung to memories as though holding them tightly enough could bring them back. Her mind refused to release its grip, even as it bled from the effort. Friends and family tried to support her, but their presence only deepened her isolation. They spoke of moving forward, of healing, of time. She heard these words as accusations. How could anyone expect her to move forward when the ground beneath her had been destroyed? She withdrew, not because she wanted solitude, but because she could not tolerate the world continuing as though nothing had changed. Laughter felt obscene. Normal conversation felt cruel. The sight of families together cut through her like glass. Every reminder of continuity emphasized her own rupture. Her home became a prison of memories. Every room echoed with absence. The silence was louder than any sound. She avoided certain spaces, unable to face what they represented. At the same time, she feared leaving them behind. as though doing so would erase what little remained. She existed in a state of contradiction, wanting escape and preservation simultaneously. Faith, once a quiet background presence, collapsed under the weight of her pain. Any belief she had held in justice, order, or purpose now felt hollow. If life could take everything without warning, then what kind of system allowed such cruelty? She prayed at first, not with reverence, but with desperation. When no answers came, prayer turned into accusation. And when accusation brought no relief, silence followed. The silence felt final. She told herself she no longer believed in anything. This loss of faith was perhaps the deepest wound. Without belief, suffering had no container, no meaning, no direction. Pain existed for its own sake, infinite and pointless. She began to feel disconnected from her own body. Hunger appeared without desire. Sleep came without rest. Tears arrived unexpectedly, then disappeared just as suddenly, leaving exhaustion in their wake. Her nervous system lived in constant tension, unable to settle. At times, she felt anger so intense it frightened her. Rage at the world, at strangers, at anyone who appeared untouched by loss. This anger brought brief relief, a sense of power in a life that now felt powerless. But it faded quickly, leaving emptiness behind. Other times, despair consumed her entirely. Thoughts of ending everything surfaced, not as a desire to die, but as a longing to escape the pain. Existence itself felt unbearable. She wondered how a human heart could contain so much suffering and continue beating. In Buddhism, this state is known as being lost in samsara, the cycle of suffering fueled by ignorance and craving. The woman was not weak for being here. She was human, and she was experiencing the full weight of attachment meeting impermanence. She had lost not only people and possessions, but the story she had told herself about life. Without that story, she did not know how to exist. And yet, beneath the chaos of grief, something subtle began to stir. There were brief moments, fleeting, almost imperceptible, when she noticed the pain without fighting it. Moments when she simply observed her breath, heavy and uneven. When she noticed the ache in her chest without naming it as unfair. These moments did not bring comfort, but they brought clarity. She noticed that pain, when observed without resistance, shifted. It moved. It did not remain fixed. The mind's refusal made it solid. Attention made it fluid. These moments were rare, and she did not trust them yet. But they planted a quiet question in her awareness. Is it possible that my suffering is not only about what I lost, but about what I am refusing to release? She did not yet have the courage to follow this question. Grief still demanded all of her attention. But the question remained, waiting patiently beneath the surface of her pain. The Buddha taught that when suffering is fully understood, it begins to transform. Not immediately, not gently, but inevitably. The woman stood at the edge of that understanding, though she could not see it yet. She believed she was lost, untethered, broken beyond repair. What she did not realize was that the ground she had lost was never solid to begin with. And what felt like free fall was, in truth, the beginning of learning how to stand without ground at all. As the weeks passed, grief did not soften. It changed its shape. The raw pain that once surged through her like a violent storm settled into something quieter, heavier, and far more dangerous. A numb exhaustion that seeped into every corner of her being. The world no longer felt hostile. It felt meaningless. She moved through her days like a shadow of the person she once was. Tasks were completed mechanically, without intention or care. Eating, sleeping, and speaking became functions, not choices. She was alive, but she was no longer living toward anything. Faith, which had already begun to crack, now collapsed entirely. She no longer believed in fairness. The idea that life rewarded effort felt naive, almost insulting. The belief that love protected those who practiced it felt like a cruel lie. Any spiritual framework she had once leaned on now appeared fragile, unable to withstand reality's weight. When people spoke of purpose, she felt anger rise. Purpose implied design. Design implied intention, and she could not accept that such devastation could be intentional. If there was a higher order, she wanted no part in it. She stopped praying, not out of rebellion, but out of resignation. Silence felt more honest than hope. To expect meaning felt dangerous. To trust again felt irresponsible. Faith, she concluded, was simply another illusion, one she could no longer afford. Without belief, direction vanished. She had once known exactly where she was going. Her life had been structured around goals, responsibilities, and expectations. Now, the future stretched before her as a blank expanse. There was no plan worth making, because there was no certainty worth trusting. Each morning, she woke with a sense of obligation rather than desire. Obligation to continue breathing. Obligation to endure. Nothing more. She avoided thinking about the future entirely. When she did, anxiety rose immediately, followed by despair. What was there to aim for when everything could be taken in an instant? Hope itself became threatening. In Buddhist teachings, this is the stage where ignorance deepens suffering. Not ignorance as lack of intelligence, but ignorance as misunderstanding the nature of reality. The woman believed she had lost faith because the world was cruel. In truth, she had lost faith in her assumptions about how the world should behave. But she was not ready to see this yet. She felt abandoned, not just by life, but by meaning itself. The narratives that once guided her actions, build, protect, succeed, love, no longer applied. Without them, she felt unmoored. She tried to distract herself. Television played endlessly in the background. Music filled the silence without touching her. Books remained unopened. Nothing held her attention for long. Everything felt distant, irrelevant. Even her own thoughts seemed foreign. She no longer trusted her judgment. Decisions, once made confidently, now felt impossible. Choice implied consequence, and consequence implied risk. She had learned, painfully, how unpredictable outcomes could be. Better to choose nothing. This paralysis extended into her sense of self. She no longer knew who she was without her former roles. Without being a partner, a provider, a caretaker, she felt undefined. Identity, stripped of its anchors, dissolved into uncertainty. She was no longer someone moving toward a future. She was someone surviving a present she did not want. People around her grew concerned. They spoke gently of counseling, of support groups, of healing practices. She listened politely, but felt detached. Healing implied restoration. Restoration implied return. And she knew, with painful clarity, that there was no returning to what had been. What she had lost was not only external. It was an entire worldview. In quiet moments, she sometimes wondered whether she had reached the end of her path. Not in a dramatic sense, but in a philosophical one. If life had no reliable structure, no guaranteed meaning, then perhaps it was best endured rather than understood. These thoughts frightened her, but she did not push them away. Fear had lost its urgency. When everything already feels lost, there is little left to protect. Yet even in this state of emptiness, something remained. She noticed it first as discomfort, not emotional pain, but a subtle unease with resignation itself. A sense that surrendering to meaninglessness felt wrong in a way she could not articulate. She did not miss her old beliefs, but she missed movement. She missed growth. She missed the sense that something was unfolding. This discomfort did not come with answers. It came with a quiet restlessness. One evening, as she sat alone in the dim light of her home, she became aware of her breath. Not deliberately, not as a practice. It simply entered her awareness, heavy and slow. She noticed how it continued, moment after moment, without her effort. Life, it seemed, had not asked her permission to continue. This realization unsettled her. If life could continue without her belief, without her control, without her faith, then perhaps belief was not required for existence. Perhaps meaning did not need to be constructed in advance. This was not hope. Not yet. But it was the first crack in her despair. In Buddhism, faith is not blind belief. It is confidence born of direct experience. The woman had lost belief in ideas, but she had not yet discovered trust in reality as it is. Her despair marked the end of one form of faith and the painful preparation for another. She stood at a crossroads, though she did not recognize it as such. One path led deeper into numb endurance, a life reduced to survival. The other path led into the unknown, not toward answers, but toward inquiry. The collapse of direction was complete. But in that collapse, the rigid structures that had once confined her were gone. Nothing pointed the way forward, but nothing blocked it either. She did not yet know where to go. She only knew that remaining lost forever was not something she could endure. And in that quiet, desperate knowing, The conditions for transformation were being formed, not through belief, not through hope, but through the simple, undeniable fact that something within her was still awake, waiting. The encounter did not happen in a temple, nor during a moment of spiritual seeking. It happened on a day when the woman had no intention of finding anything at all. She had left her house without a destination, walking simply to escape the walls that had begun to feel like a tomb. The streets were familiar, yet distant, as though she were moving through a place that no longer belonged to her. People passed by, absorbed in their own lives, their conversations drifting past her like noise without meaning. She walked until her body, not her mind, decided to stop. A small park lay ahead, quiet and nearly empty. The trees stood still in the afternoon light, their leaves barely moving. Something about the stillness drew her in. She sat on a worn wooden bench, feeling the weight of exhaustion settle into her bones. That was when she noticed him. He sat a short distance away, cross-legged on the grass, unmoving. His clothing was simple, worn but clean. His posture was upright without stiffness, relaxed without collapse. His presence was unremarkable in appearance, yet strangely noticeable, like a quiet space in a crowded room. She did not know if he was a monk, a lay practitioner, or simply someone sitting in silence. There were no symbols to identify him, no books, no beads, no signs of teaching. He was simply there. At first, she felt irritation. His stillness felt intrusive, almost offensive, against the turmoil inside her. How could someone sit so calmly when the world was so unbearably broken? She turned her gaze away, focusing instead on the ground beneath her feet. But her attention kept returning to him, not because of curiosity, but because of contrast. The noise inside her mind grew louder in the presence of his silence. Thoughts surged, memories, regrets, questions, clashing violently with the calm she observed nearby. She felt exposed, as though her inner chaos had been placed under a bright light. She considered leaving, yet something held her there. Minutes passed, or perhaps longer. Time felt irrelevant. Eventually, he opened his eyes and looked in her direction. His gaze was steady, neither intense nor evasive. There was no judgment in it, no curiosity, no expectation, just presence. She felt an unexpected tightening in her chest. A strange vulnerability surfaced, uninvited. She looked away quickly, embarrassed by the sudden emotion. He did not speak. She waited, unsure why. Part of her expected a question, a greeting, some acknowledgement. But none came. He returned his gaze to the ground, as though she were not there at all. This absence of engagement unsettled her more than attention would have. After a long pause, she spoke. Not because she wanted conversation, but because silence had become unbearable. "How can you just sit there?" The words escaped her mouth sharper than she intended. "Don't you see what's happening in the world?" He did not react immediately. When he finally responded, his voice was calm and unhurried. "I see what is happening," he said, "and I see what is happening in you." The words startled her, not because they were intrusive, but because they were accurate. She laughed bitterly. "Then you know there's nothing to be calm about." He regarded her quietly. Calm does not come from circumstances. Something in his tone, gentle, uninsistent, disarmed her defenses. She felt anger rise, followed by exhaustion. Her shoulders slumped. "Everything I had is gone," she said. "My family, my life, everything I believed in." Her voice wavered, then steadied again, hardening. "Don't tell me this is meant to teach me something." He shook his head slowly. "I would never say that." The relief she felt surprised her. They sat in silence again. This time, the silence felt different. Less confrontational, more spacious. Her breath slowed without her noticing. The tightness in her chest eased slightly. After a while, she spoke again. "Then what's the point?" He did not answer right away. Instead, he picked up a dry leaf from the ground, holding it lightly between his fingers. "This leaf fell from the tree," he said. "Was it a punishment?" She frowned. "Of course not." "Was it a reward?" "No, it fell because it was time." She stared at the leaf, something shifting in her awareness. The simplicity of the statement unsettled her. "My life didn't just fall," she said quietly. "It was taken." He nodded. "Pain was taken. Loss was taken. But suffering." He paused, letting the word settle. "Suffering is something we add." Her first instinct was resistance. The idea felt offensive, almost cruel. Was he suggesting her pain was her fault? Seeing her reaction, he continued gently. Pain is unavoidable. Loss is real. But suffering grows when we demand that reality be different from what it is. She wanted to argue, to defend her grief, to protect her right to be devastated. But something in his presence made argument feel unnecessary. He was not trying to convince her. He was simply stating what he had seen. You don't have to believe me, he added. You don't have to believe anything. Just notice. Notice what? That everything you are experiencing is changing. Even now. She sat with that statement, uncomfortable. Her pain felt endless, solid, unchanging. Yet as she paid attention, she noticed small shifts. Her breath, the weight of her body on the bench, the sounds of birds nearby, the ache in her chest pulsing rather than fixed. He had not given her hope. He had given her observation. Before she could respond, he stood, bowing his head slightly. We may meet again, he said, or we may not. Either way is complete. And with that, he walked away. She remained seated long after he was gone, her mind strangely quiet. No answers had been given, no beliefs restored. Yet something had changed. For the first time since everything collapsed, she did not feel entirely alone in her suffering. She had not met a teacher who preached. She had met a teacher who simply showed her how to be still in the presence of pain. And in that stillness, a door she did not know existed had begun to open. After the encounter in the park, the woman did not feel transformed. There was no sudden clarity, no lightness, no relief from grief. Life did not soften, and her pain did not disappear. If anything, the silence she had tasted made her more aware of how restless her mind truly was. Yet something subtle had shifted. She found herself returning to that moment again and again, not to the words the man had spoken, but to the way he had been. The steadiness of his presence lingered in her memory like an unanswered question. He had not offered comfort. He had not tried to explain away her loss. And yet, for a brief moment, her suffering had loosened its grip. She could not understand how this had happened. Days passed. She resumed her routines, such as they were. But now, alongside the familiar ache, there was a quiet curiosity. Not about meaning, but about experience itself. One evening, unable to sleep, she sat on the floor of her living room, the lights dimmed, the house silent. Her mind raced, as it always did. Memories rose and fell. Regret tightened her chest. Anger flared and faded. Then she remembered his words. Just notice. She did not know how to meditate. She did not adopt any posture or technique. She simply sat and noticed what was happening inside her body. The breath came and went, uneven, shallow at first. Her chest felt heavy, as though grief were a physical weight pressing inward. Thoughts surged. This is pointless. This won't change anything. She noticed those thoughts too. Something strange occurred. The moment she observed a thought without following it, it lost strength. It did not vanish, but it moved on. Another thought replaced it. Then another. None stayed. Her pain, which had felt solid and permanent, began to reveal movement. Waves rather than walls. This disturbed her. If pain could change, then it was not fixed. And if it was not fixed, then perhaps it was not who she was. The next day, she found herself walking back to the park. Not to search for the man. She doubted she would see him again, but to sit where she had sat before. She closed her eyes and listened. Sounds emerged. Birds, wind, distant voices. All arising and passing. Nothing stayed. Nothing waited. The realization arrived slowly, without drama. Everything was changing. Not only her circumstances, but her sensations, thoughts, and emotions. Even grief, which she had believed to be endless, was not static. It pulsed, shifted, softened, intensified, and receded. This was impermanence, not as a philosophical idea, but as lived experience. In Buddhist teaching, impermanence, anicca, is the truth that all conditioned things arise and pass away. The woman had heard this concept before, but now she was beginning to see it directly. And seeing it was both frightening and liberating. Frightening, because if everything changes, then nothing can be relied upon. Liberating, because if everything changes, then suffering cannot last forever. She noticed how her mind resisted this truth. When a moment of calm appeared, fear followed quickly. What if it goes away? When pain lessened, anxiety arose. What if it comes back? She saw clearly that her suffering was not only caused by pain, but by her demand for certainty. She wanted pain to end permanently. She wanted calm to stay forever. But life offered neither. Life offered movement. The more she observed, the more she saw how clinging intensified her suffering. When she grasped at moments of relief, they dissolved faster. When she pushed away pain, it grew louder. Resistance created tension. Acceptance created space. This did not mean she liked her situation. It did not mean she approved of loss. It meant she stopped fighting reality at every moment. One afternoon, as she sat quietly, a memory of her family surfaced unexpectedly. The familiar surge of sorrow followed. But instead of collapsing into it, she stayed present. She felt the ache, the warmth, the tears forming. She noticed how the pain rose, peaked, and slowly faded. Not disappearing entirely, but shifting into something softer. She had not lost her love. She had lost its form. This understanding pierced her deeply. Impermanence did not erase meaning. It transformed it. Love did not vanish when people died. It changed shape, becoming memory, gratitude, longing, and care. Pain was the price of love, not its negation. The Buddha taught that clinging to permanence in an impermanent world creates suffering. The woman began to see how her life before loss had been built on the assumption that stability was guaranteed. Now, through suffering, she was learning a deeper stability, the ability to remain present as things change. She still had moments of despair, still had days when grief overwhelmed her. But now, beneath the pain, there was understanding. She was no longer asking, "Why did this happen to me?" She was beginning to ask, "What is happening right now?" This shift was subtle, but profound. It moved her from resistance to observation, from demand to curiosity. She did not adopt beliefs. She did not cling to teachings. She simply paid attention. Impermanence became her teacher, not through words, but through direct experience. Every breath, every thought, every sensation demonstrated the same truth: nothing stays. And somehow, in this truth, she found relief. If nothing stays, then despair will pass. If nothing stays, then peace can arise again. If nothing stays, then she does not need to carry the weight of permanence. She realized that her suffering had been intensified by the belief that this pain would define the rest of her life. Impermanence whispered otherwise. The teaching did not remove her grief. It removed her fear of being trapped in it forever. For the first time since everything collapsed, she felt a quiet confidence, not in outcomes, but in change itself. Life would continue to move. Pain would arise and pass. Joy might return, then leave again. And through it all, she could remain present. She did not yet call this freedom, but she felt its edge, and she knew she was no longer the same person who had walked into the park that day. Impermanence had entered her understanding, not as a threat, but as a truth that could carry her forward, one breath at a time. Understanding impermanence did not end the woman's suffering. It changed how she met it. Pain still arose, often unexpectedly, often intensely. Grief did not vanish simply because she had seen its changing nature. Some days, memories still struck her with the same sharpness as before. Certain sounds, places, or fragments of conversation could open wounds she believed had begun to heal. But something fundamental had shifted. She no longer experienced pain as an enemy to be defeated, nor as a verdict on her life. Instead, pain became an object of attention, something to be seen clearly, moment by moment. At first, this clarity felt uncomfortable, almost invasive. She had spent so long either drowning in pain or running from it that standing still in its presence felt unnatural. Her mind constantly attempted to narrate the experience. This pain means I am broken. This pain means I will never be whole again. But now, when these thoughts arose, she noticed them. Noticed how they appeared suddenly, fully formed. Noticed how they carried emotional charge. Noticed how, when not believed immediately, they softened and dissolved. She began to distinguish between pain and the story about pain. The pain itself was physical and emotional sensation, tightness in the chest, heat behind the eyes, heaviness in the limbs. These sensations were intense, but they were direct, honest. They did not exaggerate themselves. The story, however, was relentless. The story said, "This should not be happening." The story said, "This will never end." The story said, "I cannot survive this." And she saw, with growing clarity, that the story multiplied suffering far beyond the pain itself. In Buddhist teachings, this distinction is crucial. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Not because we can choose to avoid pain, but because suffering arises when we cling to thoughts about how things should be. The woman was beginning to see this directly. One afternoon, grief surged without warning. She found herself sitting on the floor, breath shallow, tears flowing freely. In the past, this would have marked the beginning of a downward spiral, hours or days lost to despair. This time, she stayed. She placed one hand on her chest, feeling the rise and fall beneath her palm. She noticed the sensation of tears on her skin, warm and salty. She noticed the tension in her jaw, the trembling in her hands. She did not ask why. She did not demand it stop. She simply observed. Something remarkable happened. The pain intensified briefly, as if testing her resolve. Then, slowly it shifted. The tightness loosened. The breath deepened. The waves receded. She was still sad, but she was no longer drowning. This experience frightened her at first. If she could be with pain without being destroyed by it, then much of what she believed about herself and about suffering was no longer true. She had believed pain was something that happened to her. Something external, overpowering, defining. Now she saw that pain was an experience within her, arising and passing like everything else. This realization did not make her cold or detached. It made her more intimate with her own humanity. She began to notice subtle forms of resistance she had never seen before. How she tightened her body when unpleasant emotions arose. How she distracted herself reflexively. How she judged herself for feeling what she felt. Each moment of noticing brought a small release. She realized that clarity was not about controlling experience. It was about allowing experience to unfold without interference. The silent teacher's words echoed in her memory. Just notice. She noticed that pain, when met with attention rather than resistance, contained information rather than threat. It revealed attachment. It revealed fear. It revealed love. Grief, she saw, was not evidence of weakness. It was evidence of connection. She began to feel gratitude woven into sorrow. Gratitude for having loved deeply enough to suffer. Gratitude for the moments that had existed, even if they had ended. This did not romanticize loss. It honored it. Seeing pain clearly also changed how she related to others. When people spoke of their struggles, small or large, she no longer felt the urge to fix them or minimize their pain. She listened, truly listened. She recognized the familiar texture of suffering and met it with quiet understanding. Her compassion deepened, not as a moral stance, but as a natural response. In Buddhism, wisdom and compassion are inseparable. As ignorance falls away, the heart opens. The woman was experiencing this truth not through doctrine, but through lived insight. She also began to notice moments of peace, small, unremarkable moments that she might once have overlooked. The feeling of sunlight on her skin, the rhythm of her steps while walking, the simple satisfaction of a warm meal. These moments did not erase pain. They existed alongside it. This coexistence surprised her. She had believed life was either suffering or happiness. Now she saw that life held both simultaneously. Pain did not cancel beauty. Beauty did not negate pain. They moved together, like currents in the same river. This understanding freed her from the demand that life be one thing or the other. She stopped waiting for grief to disappear before allowing herself to live. She stopped believing she needed to be healed before being present. She was present now, and presence itself became a refuge. There were setbacks, days when clarity vanished and old patterns returned. Days when pain felt overwhelming again. But even then, something remained. She noticed that she noticed. This meta-awareness, awareness of experience itself, created space where none had existed before. In that space, she was no longer completely identified with pain. She could feel it without becoming it. The Buddha taught that liberation begins with right seeing, seeing things as they truly are, without distortion. The woman was beginning to see pain not as an enemy, but as a teacher. Pain taught her about impermanence. Pain taught her about attachment. Pain taught her about the limits of control. And, unexpectedly, pain taught her about freedom. Because if pain could be observed, then it did not own her. She did not need to reject it. She did not need to surrender to it. She only needed to see it clearly. This clarity did not remove grief from her life, but it removed despair. She was no longer trapped in the belief that suffering defined her existence. She was learning to rest in the awareness that held suffering, and everything else. This awareness did not promise comfort. It promised truth. And truth, she discovered, was enough. As she continued to practice this seeing, this quiet, patient observation, she felt a new kind of strength emerging. Not the strength of endurance, but the strength of openness. The courage to feel without armor. She did not yet know where this path would lead. But for the first time since everything had fallen apart, she trusted the direction, not because she could see it clearly, but because she was no longer afraid of what she might encounter along the way. Pain had not disappeared, but it had lost its power to imprison her. And in that release, however fragile, she tasted something she had not felt in a very long time. Inner freedom. The woman had walked a long road. It was not a road marked by clear signs, smooth pavement, or predictable turns. It was a road forged in the landscape of loss, grief, and despair. Yet as the days passed, she began to sense subtle changes within herself, a quiet emergence of life from the ashes of what had been lost. She woke one morning with a sense of emptiness that felt different from the crushing void of earlier months. It was spacious, open, a pause between waves of emotion. She noticed the sunlight spilling into her room, falling across the floor in warm, shifting patterns. For the first time in years, she paused to watch it, feeling the warmth on her skin without distraction, without judgment. Breathing in the light and air, she realized something had begun to shift inside her. She was beginning to inhabit her own life again, not with urgency, not with expectation, not with the desire to reclaim what had been taken, but simply, fully present in the moment. The silent teacher's lessons echoed in her mind. Notice, observe, pain will pass, clarity will arrive. Everything changes. She had learned to see impermanence, to watch pain without being consumed by it, and to allow life to unfold moment by moment. Now she felt the first stirrings of something that resembled renewal. She began to reconnect with the world around her in small ways. She walked through the streets, noticing the textures of the pavement beneath her feet, the rhythm of her steps, the wind brushing against her face. People passed by, and she noticed them without judgment or expectation. Faces, expressions, gestures, she observed them as part of the constant flux of life, without clinging or rejection. In these moments, she discovered a simple truth. Life continued, not in spite of loss, but alongside it. The world did not pause for grief. The river of existence flowed on, carrying with it both beauty and suffering. And she was part of that river again, not above it, not beneath it, but within it, moving with its currents. The process of rebirth was not dramatic. There were no fireworks, no sudden realizations that erased the past. It was gradual, like the slow emergence of light at dawn. She noticed her reactions softening, her judgments loosening, and her heart opening to the present without demanding that it conform to her desires. She began to engage in small acts of compassion, not because they would erase her pain, but because they felt natural, spontaneous, inevitable. A neighbor struggling with groceries, a child who dropped a toy, a stray animal in need. She offered help, attention, and care without calculating benefit or expectation. These acts, however modest, reminded her that life could be meaningful again, even in the absence of certainty. At night, she practiced sitting quietly with herself, observing breath, sensations, and thoughts. She did not seek to escape grief but to meet it fully, allowing it to arise and fall as it naturally did. In these moments, she began to feel a profound sense of liberation. Not the liberation of achieving happiness or erasing suffering, but the liberation of being fully awake to life as it is. The impermanence she had once feared now became a source of insight. She saw that nothing could be clung to, not her sorrow, not her memories, not even the renewed sense of hope. Everything arose and passed. Everything was transient. In this recognition, she discovered freedom. Freedom from the need to control, freedom from the burden of permanence, freedom from the insistence that life conform to her desires. This understanding did not make her indifferent. She still felt grief, joy, love, and fear. But now these experiences were seen as fluid, as phenomena arising and passing in the landscape of awareness. She could feel deeply without being consumed, love without being attached, sorrow without being imprisoned. Gradually, she began to rebuild her life. not by reclaiming the old, but by creating something new. She sought work that felt meaningful, not merely productive. She nurtured relationships based on presence and authenticity, rather than expectation or obligation. She found small pleasures in ordinary routines: the aroma of tea, the warmth of a blanket, the rhythm of walking, the silence of the evening. Through these simple practices, she discovered the essence of rebirth, the realization that life could begin anew, not as a return to what was lost, but as a continuation with awareness. The past remained, a source of memory, wisdom, and gratitude, but it no longer dictated her existence. She was free to participate in life moment by moment, aware that each breath, each sensation, each encounter was impermanent and precious. One evening, she returned to the park where she had met the silent teacher. The trees stood as they had, leaves rustling in the wind. She sat on the same bench, closing her eyes and breathing slowly. In the quiet, she felt the presence of the world in its ever-changing form. The gentle movements of the air, the distant calls of birds, the subtle vibrations of the earth beneath her. She realized that the silent teacher's presence had been with her all along, not as a person, but as the living teaching within experience itself. Each sensation, each moment of awareness, each encounter with impermanence and suffering had guided her toward insight. She had learned to see clearly, to rest in awareness, and to allow life to unfold naturally. A deep sense of gratitude arose within her. Gratitude for the losses that had opened the path, for the suffering that had refined her attention, for the quiet moments of presence that had become her refuge. She understood that rebirth was not a denial of the past, but a transformation of relationship with it, a recognition that life, in its impermanence, could be embraced fully and authentically. The woman no longer defined herself by what she had lost. She defined herself by her capacity to be awake, to observe, and to respond with presence and compassion. She had become a witness to her own life, able to navigate sorrow and joy with clarity and grace. In Buddhist terms, she had begun to embody the principles of mindfulness, sati, and insight, vipassana. She was no longer swept away by the currents of attachment and aversion. She could meet life as it was, moment by moment, with awareness, equanimity, and compassion. The path to rebirth, she realized, was not a single event but an ongoing practice. Each day offered opportunities to observe, to let go, to embrace impermanence, and to respond with presence. Each moment was a chance to awaken anew, to live fully despite uncertainty and loss. And so, she continued walking the path, sometimes with confidence, sometimes with hesitation, always with awareness. Life remained unpredictable, challenging, and impermanent, but she had discovered the inner resources to meet it with presence, courage, and compassion. She had been reborn, not as someone who had forgotten loss, but as someone who had learned to live fully within it. The ashes of the past had nourished new growth. The pain that once threatened to destroy her had become the ground of her awakening. And in this rebirth, she glimpsed the profound truth that suffering, when met with awareness, can become a doorway to freedom. Impermanence, when embraced, can become a teacher, and life, in all its flux, is an invitation to awaken moment by moment, breath by breath, heart by heart. She sat in quiet gratitude, feeling the pulse of life beneath her palms, and for the first time in a long time, she smiled. Not as a mask, but as an expression of presence, of insight, and of the fragile, beautiful, impermanent joy of being alive. Rebirth, she soon realized, was not the end of a journey but the beginning of another. After months of sitting with her grief, observing impermanence, and cultivating clarity, she faced a new challenge, learning to fully engage with life once more. At first, it was terrifying. The world seemed both enormous and indifferent, capable of giving and taking with equal ease. For years, she had retreated from existence, hiding in the shadows of loss. She had believed that to feel deeply was to risk being destroyed again. And now, as she emerged from that shadow, the very act of re-engagement felt like stepping onto a precipice. She began cautiously. Each morning, she woke and allowed herself to notice the small details of existence. The light filtering through the blinds, the texture of the sheets beneath her fingers, the scent of coffee brewing in the kitchen. These moments, though ordinary, were profoundly grounding. They reminded her that life continued, not because she commanded it, but because it moved in its own rhythm, inviting her to participate. She started walking through her neighborhood again, noticing the faces of strangers. She had once felt invisible, disconnected from everyone, as if her loss had severed the thread linking her to the world. Now, she observed quietly, without judgment. A child's laughter, the smell of fresh bread from a nearby bakery, the warm nod of a passerby. Each sensation reminded her that life was not only suffering. It was also alive, vibrant, and full of subtle invitations to presence. Gradually, she took small risks. She spoke to acquaintances she had avoided for months. She visited places she had once loved but had feared because of the memories they held. At first, the anxiety was palpable. Her heart would race, her palms would sweat, and the familiar fog of despair would rise. But she learned to breathe through it, to notice the physical sensations without feeding the mental narratives that demanded she flee. Each small step forward became an act of courage, a declaration that life was worth experiencing, even in its imperfection. As she ventured further, she encountered moments of joy that startled her. A bird landing on a tree branch outside her window, a smile from a stranger, the simple pleasure of preparing a meal with care. These instances, fleeting as they were, reminded her that happiness was not a permanent state to be earned or achieved, but a subtle current flowing alongside sorrow. She began to understand that embracing life meant embracing both joy and pain, without clinging to either. She also began to form new connections. She joined a small community group focused on shared interests rather than personal histories. She discovered that engaging with others was not about seeking validation or avoiding loneliness, but about participating in the ongoing tapestry of life. She listened, spoke, and laughed, learning again the rhythm of human interaction, the ebb and flow of conversation, and the beauty of shared presence. Relationships became a practice of mindfulness, a living application of the lessons she had learned in solitude. Through these experiences, she noticed a profound shift in her inner landscape. The tight grip of fear that had once constrained her heart began to loosen. She could feel sadness arise without panic, gratitude without attachment, love without expectation. Life's uncertainties no longer held the same power over her. She understood that she could navigate the storms of existence with clarity, compassion, and equanimity, just as she had navigated her grief. The woman also revisited her spiritual practice with renewed curiosity. Meditation was no longer a tool for escape, but a means of engagement. Sitting quietly, she observed the interplay of sensation, thought, and emotion with a gentle attentiveness. She noticed the impermanence of each moment, the arising and passing of experiences, and the subtle interconnection of all things. This awareness became a source of resilience, allowing her to move through life with a grounded sense of presence rather than clinging or aversion. She encountered setbacks, as she inevitably would. Old patterns of avoidance, self-doubt, and fear occasionally resurfaced, especially in moments of stress or unexpected loss. But now, she met these challenges with awareness rather than resistance. She observed them, learned from them, and allowed them to pass. In this way, each difficulty became an opportunity to practice the lessons of impermanence and mindfulness, reinforcing her inner stability. One of the most profound realizations came as she reflected on the nature of identity. She had spent so long defining herself through loss, as a widow, as a survivor, as someone who had suffered. Now, she began to see that identity was fluid, shaped by each moment of attention and engagement rather than fixed by past experiences. She could be many things at once: grieving, joyful, compassionate, curious, without contradiction. She began to embrace the multiplicity of her existence, seeing herself not as a victim of circumstances, but as an active participant in the unfolding of life. Her relationship with fear transformed as well. Fear had once been a constant companion, whispering that life was dangerous, that attachment would always lead to loss, that suffering was unavoidable. Now, fear became a teacher. She noticed its presence, observed its patterns, and allowed it to exist without allowing it to dictate her choices. Fear became a signal of boundaries, an indicator of growth, rather than a barrier to living. As the woman embraced life again, she discovered a subtle joy in simplicity. She no longer required grand achievements or dramatic experiences to feel alive. The taste of a meal, the sound of rain, the feeling of the wind on her face, each moment became a source of appreciation and wonder. She realized that life's richness was not in its permanence or predictability, but in its fleeting, dynamic nature. In this process, she began to cultivate compassion not only for herself, but for others. She recognized the universality of suffering and the ways in which attachment and aversion created pain. She learned to listen without judgment, to offer help without expectation, and to be present with others in their struggles. Compassion became a natural expression of her mindfulness, a reflection of the understanding she had gained through her own experiences. The woman also revisited her relationship with her past. She no longer sought to erase or deny her losses. Instead, she integrated them into her ongoing life, honoring the experiences that had shaped her without allowing them to define her entirely. Memories of her family, her previous home, and her former self became sources of wisdom and gratitude. She could remember, feel, and release without being trapped. Through these practices, the woman came to understand that embracing life again was not about perfection, control, or permanence. It was about presence. It was about allowing experiences, painful or joyful, fleeting or enduring, to arise and pass with awareness, without grasping or aversion. It was about engaging fully in the flow of existence, moment by moment. By the time she reached this stage, the woman felt a quiet confidence. She knew that life would continue to present challenges, that grief could return, and that joy could be fleeting. But she also knew that she had cultivated the inner resources to navigate these fluctuations with clarity and equanimity. She had discovered that the true path to rebirth lay not in escaping suffering, but in embracing life fully, with mindfulness, presence, and compassion. Sitting in the park where her journey had taken a pivotal turn, she watched the sun descend, painting the sky with hues of orange and gold. She felt the warmth of the fading light on her skin, the rhythm of her breath, and the pulse of life all around her. In that moment, she realized that she had been reborn, not as someone untouched by loss, but as someone awakened to the richness and impermanence of existence. Life, she understood, was a continuous practice of awareness, acceptance, and engagement. Each moment offered a chance to awaken, to respond with clarity, and to embrace the unfolding flow of existence. Rebirth was not a final destination, but a living process, an ongoing invitation to meet life as it is, with courage, compassion, and mindful presence. And as she sat quietly, she felt a deep, abiding peace, not as an escape from the world, but as an intimate connection to it. She had learned to live fully again, embracing life in all its impermanent, dynamic, and beautiful complexity. She was alive, fully, and she was awake. The woman's journey of rebirth had not been a straight path, nor had it been one she could navigate by force or will alone. Months of quiet reflection, observation, and acceptance had brought her to a state of inner clarity, but life, in its unpredictability, continued to offer lessons. The world outside remained filled with both beauty and suffering, and she now realized that awakening was not a destination. It was a continuous practice, expressed moment by moment. As she walked through her neighborhood on an early morning, the air crisp with the freshness of winter, she noticed the lives around her with a sensitivity that was new and startling. A young mother struggled to calm her crying child. An elderly man shuffled along with a cane. A group of students laughed and jostled each other on their way to school. Previously, she would have walked past these scenes, absorbed in her own inner turmoil, barely aware of the lives brushing past her. Now, she felt a sense of presence and empathy that connected her to every movement, every expression. She paused to observe a woman struggling with heavy grocery bags. Without hesitation, she approached and offered her assistance. The woman's relief was immediate, but so was her own. Helping, she realized, was no longer an obligation or a performance. It was a natural expression of the care that had been cultivated within her through months of observing pain and impermanence. Compassion, she understood now, was not something to be learned or acquired. It arose when the heart was awake. As she continued her walk, she reflected on the lessons she had absorbed. Pain, impermanence, and the clarity of observation had become teachers, guiding her toward a life lived in mindfulness. But the ultimate test, she realized, was not the ability to sit in silence or observe suffering in isolation. It was how to live within the world, fully engaged, without being consumed by attachment or aversion. She remembered the silent teacher from the park, who had shown her that presence could be more powerful than words. His lesson had been subtle, awareness in the midst of life, without interference, without judgment. That lesson had grown roots in her mind and heart. Now, she could carry it into action. Later that week, she encountered a man in the local market who was angry and impatient, shouting at a cashier over a minor mistake. The scene triggered an immediate rush of discomfort within her, a reflexive tension that once might have drawn her into the drama or caused her to shrink away. But instead of reacting, she paused. She observed the man's anger, his clenched fists, the strain in his voice. She noticed the tightness rising in her own chest, and then she noticed her breath, steadying, grounding her. Compassion arose naturally. She did not need to judge the man or fix the situation. She simply recognized his suffering as part of the human condition, a manifestation of frustration, fear, and attachment to how things should be. In that recognition, her heart opened, and a gentle calm settled over her. The man's anger passed eventually, like all things, leaving her with a sense of equanimity. She realized that compassion did not always require action. Sometimes it required only presence, a willingness to witness suffering without resistance. Her days became filled with these moments, small, unassuming encounters that tested her understanding of impermanence, compassion, and clarity. She listened to friends who shared their worries without offering unsolicited advice. She comforted neighbors without expectation of reward or acknowledgement. She offered care to strangers and animals alike, understanding that the act of giving arose naturally when the heart was awake. Each encounter was an opportunity to practice presence, each moment a microcosm of the lessons she had internalized. As the seasons shifted, she also faced moments of personal challenge. Old fears resurfaced. Memories of her lost family would sometimes pierce her heart with sudden intensity. Days came when grief felt as sharp as it had in the earliest weeks of her journey. Yet now, she had tools that allowed her to meet these moments without collapse. She observed the arising of emotion, the tightening of her body, the rapid racing of thoughts. She noted the impermanence of each sensation. She allowed it to exist, to flow through her without grasping or avoidance. And invariably, as all things do, the wave of emotion would pass. Through this ongoing practice, she began to feel a deeper connection not only to herself, but to the world. She noticed the interdependence of life, the way her small acts of kindness influenced others, the way the kindness of strangers touched her, the way the natural world moved in cycles of growth, decay, and renewal. She understood that life was a network of interwoven experiences, and that her awareness and compassion could ripple outward in ways that were subtle but meaningful. One afternoon, she visited the park where her journey had begun, sitting under the same trees she had once observed with grief and hesitation. Children played nearby, couples walked hand in hand, and an elderly man fed birds at the edge of the pond. She felt a profound sense of connection and gratitude, a recognition that she was part of this ever-changing tapestry. Her losses were still present. They were threads in her experience, but they no longer defined the entirety of her life. Instead, they had become teachers, sources of wisdom and compassion. She began to embrace life fully again, not by clinging to stability or seeking constant pleasure, but by accepting the transience of each moment. Joy, sorrow, love, pain, all arose and passed. She could meet each with awareness, responding skillfully rather than reactively. Her heart had opened to the full spectrum of human experience, allowing her to engage deeply without being consumed. The woman also found herself drawn to helping others navigate their own struggles. She volunteered at a local shelter, listened to those in pain, and shared her story when appropriate, not as a lesson to be imposed, but as a reflection of shared humanity. Her own journey had taught her that suffering is universal and that the path to healing is paved with awareness, presence, and compassion. She offered guidance gently, without expectation, recognizing that each person's path is unique. In her solitude, she continued to practice meditation and self-reflection. She observed her thoughts and emotions with kindness and precision, noting impermanence and interconnectedness. Through these practices, she maintained the clarity that had been her foundation, ensuring that her engagement with the world was rooted in awareness rather than habit, reaction, or unresolved pain. As months turned into years, she noticed a profound transformation. The woman who had once felt shattered and alone now experienced life as vibrant and interconnected. She had cultivated resilience, compassion, and insight, recognizing the impermanence of all things while embracing the beauty and complexity of existence. She had learned to meet suffering without fear, to engage with joy without attachment, and to act with presence in every moment. Ultimately, she understood that the path forward was not about achieving perfection or erasing suffering. It was about living fully in the flux of life, with open awareness, compassionate engagement, and acceptance of impermanence. She realized that life's richness arises not from stability or permanence, but from the continuous interplay of change, attention, and compassionate action. Walking through the world with this awareness, she felt a deep sense of peace. Not a peace born of certainty, but a peace born of understanding. The understanding that life is impermanent, that suffering is universal, and that each moment is an opportunity to awaken, to act with compassion, and to embrace existence fully. And so, the woman walked forward, no longer defined by loss, but enlivened by the lessons it had brought. She had been reborn, not into a life without pain, but into a life fully alive, awake, and engaged. Each step she took was a testament to resilience, mindfulness, and the profound capacity of the human heart to heal, to love, and to awaken. With each breath, she embraced the impermanence of life, the depth of her compassion, and the beauty of presence, walking forward with courage, wisdom, and an open heart, ready to meet whatever the world would bring next. By the time the woman reached this stage of her journey, she had learned to navigate life with presence, compassion, and clarity. Yet a subtle realization had begun to settle within her. Life's impermanence extended beyond personal loss or grief. Everything, relationships, opportunities, joys, and even her own sense of self, was subject to the ever-turning wheel of change. And with this understanding came a deeper, more challenging lesson: the art of letting go. She had already faced the loss of family, home, and possessions. She had embraced impermanence in theory and in practice, seeing that nothing remained fixed. But she now began to understand that attachment was not only about external things. It could also arise from inner states. The desire for security, the clinging to identity, the insistence that life unfold according to her expectations. One morning, she woke to a sensation of restlessness she had not felt in months. On the surface, everything in her life seemed stable: her daily routines, her work, her small community of friends. Yet an undercurrent of unease lingered, subtle but persistent. She realized that she had been holding tightly to the sense of self she had rebuilt, the reborn version of herself, as though it were a permanent achievement. This realization startled her. Had she been clinging to her recovery the same way she had once clung to what was lost? Was she repeating the same cycle of attachment, simply in a more refined form? She sat quietly, as she had learned to do, observing the sensation without judgment. She noticed the tension in her shoulders, the tightness in her chest, the nervous flutter of her thoughts. She let each of these sensations arise fully, then pass. She reminded herself, this too is impermanent. This too will change. In Buddhist practice, the concept of anicca, impermanence, is not limited to external circumstances. It encompasses thoughts, emotions, identity, and all phenomena. The woman realized that clinging to a particular version of herself, or to any sense of stability, would only recreate suffering in another form. True freedom required the willingness to let go again and again, moment by moment. The first step in this deeper practice was acknowledging the attachments that remained hidden. She recognized her attachment to control, the desire to manage life, to predict outcomes, to avoid uncertainty. She recognized attachment to comfort, the longing for predictability, routine, and ease. She recognized attachment to self-image, the belief that she must remain the reborn woman, strong and mindful, without vulnerability or weakness. Each recognition brought discomfort. She realized that these attachments were subtle, yet powerful. They shaped her thoughts, limited her openness, and threatened to confine her freedom. But she also felt a spark of hope. The very awareness of these attachments was a sign that she could loosen them, that she could continue to evolve. She began to practice letting go deliberately. She chose small moments to release control, allowing plans to shift without frustration, embracing uncertainty in her work, and accepting unpredictability in her relationships. She allowed emotions to flow without clinging to their meaning or identity. When pride, fear, or anger arose, she observed them, noticing their impermanent nature, and gently released them rather than reacting. One afternoon, she visited a river near her home, watching the water flow endlessly past stones and fallen branches. The river became a mirror for her mind. Each wave, each ripple, was fleeting, arising and passing in its own time. She saw that clinging to permanence was like trying to hold water in her hands, impossible and counterproductive. She reflected that life itself was a river, continuously moving, with beauty and turbulence intertwined. She thought about her past, her family, her home, her possessions, and realized she no longer suffered at their absence. They had shaped her, yes, and she carried their memory with gratitude. But she understood that holding on to them as anchors of identity would only recreate pain. To live fully in the present, she needed to embrace the flow of life, to participate in it without grasping, and to meet change with equanimity. This practice of letting go extended to her relationships. She had formed meaningful connections in her reborn life, yet she recognized the impermanence inherent in every relationship. Friends could leave, circumstances could shift, life itself could alter the fabric of connection. Rather than fearing this impermanence, she welcomed it as part of life's natural rhythm. She offered love and attention freely, without clinging to outcomes or demanding permanence. She also revisited the most challenging aspect of impermanence, her own self. She had cultivated a version of herself that was mindful, compassionate, and resilient, but she realized that even this self was not fixed. Thoughts, emotions, desires, and insights continued to arise and fall. By embracing the impermanence of identity, she felt an unprecedented freedom. She could grow, evolve, and even fail without fear, knowing that each state of being was temporary and part of a larger flow. In this openness, she discovered a profound connection to the larger cycles of life. Birth and death, creation and decay, joy and sorrow, all were part of a continuous circle. She felt an intimate awareness of this cyclical nature, a sense of unity with the world around her. Trees shed leaves only to grow new ones. Rivers carried water that had once nourished distant lands. Birds migrated, returning seasonally. All phenomena, including herself, were interwoven in impermanence. This realization transformed her actions. She approached each moment with care and attention, knowing that it would never come again. She nurtured relationships and expressed love fully, but without clinging. She pursued work and creative endeavors with engagement, yet without attachment to outcomes. She allowed emotions to arise, fully experienced yet transient, flowing like the river she had observed. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, she sat in meditation, contemplating the cycle of life and the beauty of impermanence. She realized that letting go was not a loss, but a liberation. By releasing attachment, she freed herself to experience the fullness of existence without fear or resistance. She felt a profound gratitude for both joy and suffering, recognizing that each had shaped her capacity for awareness and compassion. In this state, she understood the ultimate teaching of impermanence. To embrace life fully, she did not need to grasp or cling. She did not need to resist change or fear loss. Life could be experienced in its entirety, its beauty, its sorrow, its unpredictability, when met with open awareness and acceptance. The woman's journey had come full circle. From the devastation of loss, through the depths of grief, into the clarity of mindfulness and the cultivation of compassion, she now moved forward with a lightness of heart. She had learned to let go, not as a passive surrender, but as an active, conscious engagement with the impermanent flow of life. And in this letting go, she discovered freedom. Freedom to feel, to love, to grow, to change. Freedom to engage with life fully, without fear of loss or attachment to permanence. Freedom to walk forward, step by step, breath by breath, in harmony with the ceaseless, beautiful circle of existence. The sun set completely, and she rose, feeling the cool evening air on her skin. With each step she took, she carried the lesson of impermanence not as a burden, but as a source of profound liberation. She understood now that life was a constant unfolding, and that by embracing the flow, she could meet each moment with courage, clarity, and compassion. She walked forward, no longer defined by the past, no longer clinging to any fixed identity, but fully alive, awake, aware, and in harmony with the eternal, ever-changing dance of life. This was her rebirth, not into certainty, not into permanence, but into the freedom that arises when one walks with awareness, love, and acceptance in the midst of life's impermanent, ever-turning circle. After years of experiencing loss, grief, and rebirth, the woman began to discover a deeper layer of life, a dimension that transcended even mindfulness and compassion. She had learned to accept impermanence, to walk forward with awareness, and to cultivate empathy and connection. But there was still a subtle longing within her, a desire for peace that was not dependent on circumstances, outcomes, or even her own efforts. One early morning, she sat by the river she had often visited. The water moved steadily, reflecting the rising sun in golden ripples. She observed the river as she had many times before, but today her attention was different. She was not trying to learn, to understand, or to transform herself. She was simply present, watching the water, feeling the breeze on her face, listening to the birds' morning song. She allowed herself to exist fully in that moment. It was in this simple presence that she felt peace, not a fleeting emotion, but a profound, underlying sense of being. For the first time, she realized that peace did not have to be achieved, earned, or secured. It was not a destination, nor was it the result of avoiding pain or cultivating joy. Peace was already here, in the very act of being awake to the present, in the full acknowledgement of what is. She reflected on her journey. She remembered the early days of grief, when even breathing felt unbearable. She remembered the months of practicing impermanence, observing sensations, thoughts, and emotions without judgment. She recalled her rebirth, the careful re-engagement with life, and the cultivation of compassion. Each step had prepared her for this moment, not as a reward, but as a natural unfolding of her awareness. The woman realized that much of human suffering comes from resisting the present. We cling to the past, fearing its repetition or wishing it back. We grasp at the future, hoping it will deliver security, happiness, or stability. Yet the present, the only reality that truly exists, is often ignored or misunderstood. When she finally allowed herself to rest fully in the present, she discovered that peace was not something to chase. It was something to recognize. Over the following days, she explored this insight in everyday life. She noticed the sensation of walking, the pressure of her feet on the ground, the rhythm of her steps, the movement of her body in space. She noticed the sound of her own breathing, the subtle noises of the world around her, the shifting light on walls and trees. She did not try to control or judge these experiences. She simply allowed herself to perceive them fully. In these moments, she felt a quiet joy, one that did not depend on anything external. It was a joy that arose naturally when attention and acceptance were present. The wind could chill her or warm her. The sunlight could brighten or fade, yet the peace within remained steady. It was not static, nor was it separate from the world. It flowed in harmony with the changing phenomena around her. The woman also noticed that living fully in the present altered her relationships. When she spoke to others, she listened deeply, without anticipating responses or judging intentions. Conversations became richer, more authentic, and more connected. She could empathize without absorbing others' suffering, and she could offer support without expecting gratitude. Presence became the foundation of her interactions, transforming both her inner state and the quality of her connections. One afternoon, she visited an elderly neighbor, Mrs. Rao, who had recently lost her husband. Mrs. Rao spoke of loneliness, fear, and grief. The woman did not try to offer solutions or explanations. Instead, she simply sat with her, listening, holding space for the emotions to arise and pass. She noticed the subtle shifts in Mrs. Rao's expressions, the tension that relaxed, the tears that came and went, the small smiles that flickered through sadness. In this shared presence, both women found a sense of comfort and understanding. The woman realized that peace could be extended outward, not just cultivated within, through the attentive and compassionate presence shared with others. As days turned into weeks, she integrated this practice of presence into all aspects of life. She cooked with awareness, noting the colors, textures, and smells of ingredients. She walked with awareness, feeling the earth beneath her feet, the wind on her skin, and the rhythm of her own breath. She rested with awareness, allowing thoughts and sensations to arise and fall without interference. She worked with awareness, attending fully to each task, however mundane, and recognizing the interconnection of all things. Through this practice, she encountered life's difficulties with equanimity. Unexpected challenges, delays, misunderstandings, minor illnesses no longer triggered panic or frustration. Instead, she observed them as part of the natural flow of events. She responded skillfully, without overreaction, and allowed outcomes to unfold without clinging. Peace, she realized, was not the absence of difficulty, but the presence of clarity and acceptance amid it. The woman also reflected on her own mortality. In previous years, thoughts of death had caused fear and despair. But now, in the light of present moment awareness, she saw life and death as inseparable. Each breath, each heartbeat, each passing moment was a reminder that existence is transient. Yet this transience was not frightening, it was beautiful. The fleeting nature of life made each moment precious, each interaction meaningful, each experience a source of learning and insight. She began to meditate on impermanence and presence simultaneously. She observed the rising and falling of sensations, thoughts, and emotions. She noticed the changing patterns of nature around her, the passing clouds, the flowing water, the cycle of day and night. She connected these observations to the awareness of her own impermanent existence, understanding that life's value lies not in permanence, but in conscious engagement with each fleeting moment. One evening, she returned to the park where she had first met the silent teacher who had guided her early steps. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the trees and pond. She sat quietly on a familiar bench, closed her eyes, and breathed deeply. She felt gratitude, not for something that had been gained or achieved, but simply for being present, awake, and alive. She realized that peace is not something external. It is not a reward or a prize. It is the recognition of life as it is, moment by moment, in all its impermanence and beauty. In this state of presence, the woman also recognized the interconnectedness of all beings. She understood that her own awareness was part of the larger web of life. Every interaction, every act of kindness, every moment of attention rippled outward. Peace, she realized, could not be contained within oneself. It naturally extended to others, creating a field of calm, clarity, and compassion. The final lesson of her journey, she understood, was simple yet profound. Life is impermanent, uncertain, and continuously unfolding. Yet within this flow, peace can be found, not by seeking, controlling, or grasping, but by resting fully in the present moment, aware of each breath, each sensation, and each encounter. Peace arises naturally when one embraces what is, without clinging, without aversion, and without expectation. The woman's journey had come full circle. She had experienced loss and grief, practiced mindfulness, cultivated compassion, embraced impermanence, and walked forward into life anew. And now, she had discovered the deepest gift of all, the ability to live fully, to meet each moment with awareness, and to find peace in the present, no matter what life brought. She rose from the bench as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a soft glow across the park. With each step she took, she felt grounded, awake, and free. Life remained unpredictable, ever-changing, and impermanent, but she was no longer afraid. She had learned to rest in awareness, to move with the flow, and to embrace existence with clarity, compassion, and presence. The woman smiled, not as a response to anything outside her, but as an expression of the peace she had discovered within. She understood now that life itself is a teacher, that impermanence is a guide, and that peace is always available when one meets the present moment fully, awake, and with an open heart. With each breath, each step, and each act of mindful attention, she continued walking the path, not towards some distant goal, but fully engaged in the eternal, ever-present moment. And in that engagement, she had found the ultimate freedom, the freedom to live fully, to love fully, and to be fully present in the remarkable, fleeting, and beautiful flow of life. The woman's life, once marked by devastation and loss, had transformed into a practice of awareness, compassion, and mindfulness. Yet there remained a deeper layer of insight, subtle but profound, that she had begun to sense: the gift of presence. Presence, she realized, was not merely a state of mindfulness or attention. It was a quality of being, a conscious engagement with life as it unfolded, moment by moment. It was the ability to meet reality without distraction, without clinging, and without resistance. And it was, in essence, a gift, not something to earn or achieve, but something to recognize and embody. One early morning, she walked along a quiet path through the woods near her home. The trees stretched skyward, their branches intertwined, forming a canopy that filtered the sunlight into gentle patterns on the forest floor. She noticed the subtle sounds around her: the rustle of leaves in the wind, the distant call of a bird, the crunch of her own footsteps on the path. Each sensation was vivid and immediate. She breathed deeply, feeling the rise and fall of her chest, the movement of her body in space, and the presence of life all around her. In this moment, she felt the essence of presence, not as a technique, but as a living experience. She realized that presence was a gift she could offer herself and others, a gift that did not depend on circumstances or outcomes. It was available at any moment, whether she was sitting in silence, walking through the forest, or interacting with another person. The woman reflected on her journey. She remembered the early days of grief, when even simple acts like breathing or opening her eyes were laden with pain. She remembered the months of cultivating mindfulness, observing impermanence, and learning to navigate the currents of emotion and thought. She remembered the cautious steps she had taken to re-engage with life, and the lessons of compassion that had emerged from her interactions with others. Each step had brought her closer to understanding the power of presence. She realized that presence was deeply connected to impermanence. Each moment arises, exists, and passes. Nothing remains fixed. By fully inhabiting the present, she could honor this natural flow, experiencing life as it was, rather than as she wished it to be. Presence allowed her to meet joy and sorrow, love and loss, without clinging or aversion. It allowed her to respond with clarity and wisdom, rather than reacting out of habit or fear. As she walked, she encountered a young woman sitting by the side of the trail, her face streaked with tears. The woman approached quietly, offering a gentle smile. She did not speak immediately. Instead, she simply sat nearby, allowing the young woman to feel her presence. After a few moments, the young woman began to speak, sharing her struggles and fears. The woman listened attentively, offering no judgment, no advice, only her presence. In that exchange, she realized the transformative power of being fully present with another person. Often, people seek solutions, explanations, or instructions, believing that help lies in words or actions. But sometimes, the deepest support comes simply from being seen, heard, and held in awareness. Presence itself can be healing, because it acknowledges the reality of suffering without trying to fix or resist it. Over the following days, the woman began to consciously practice presence in every aspect of her life. While preparing meals, she noticed the colors, textures, and aromas of the ingredients. While walking through the city, She observed the faces, gestures, and movements of those around her. While engaging with friends and neighbors, she listened fully, without planning her responses or drifting into distraction. Each moment became an opportunity to inhabit reality with clarity and attention. She also began to notice the subtle ways in which presence transformed her inner experience. Thoughts and emotions no longer dictated her actions. She observed them with a gentle curiosity, allowing them to arise and pass without clinging. Fear no longer controlled her, because she could meet it in the present moment, recognize its impermanence, and respond skillfully. Joy no longer became a source of attachment, because she could experience it fully while understanding that it, too, would change. Presence extended to her relationship with the natural world. She found herself marveling at the intricate patterns of leaves, the subtle variations in light, the rhythm of birdsong, and the flow of water in the river. She noticed how each element of nature existed in harmony, constantly arising and passing, yet perfectly complete in each moment. By observing this flow, she recognized her own connection to the larger web of life. Presence, she realized, was both personal and universal, a recognition of the interdependence of all things. One evening, she returned to the park where she had spent so many hours in meditation and reflection. The sun was low on the horizon, casting long shadows and bathing the trees in golden light. She sat quietly, closing her eyes and breathing deeply. In that stillness, she became aware of the subtle rhythm of existence, the rise and fall of her breath, the beating of her heart, the distant sounds of life continuing beyond her awareness. She felt a profound sense of gratitude for this moment, recognizing it as complete and sufficient in itself. She understood that presence was not about achieving perfection or control. It was not about avoiding suffering or clinging to pleasure. It was about fully inhabiting life as it is, moment by moment, with awareness and acceptance. It was about seeing clearly, feeling deeply, and responding skillfully, without interference or resistance. Presence was both simple and profound, ordinary and extraordinary, a gift freely available to all who could recognize it. The woman reflected on her interactions with others. She realized that presence was a gift she could offer not only to herself, but to everyone she encountered. By being fully present with friends, family, neighbors, and even strangers, she could create moments of connection, understanding, and compassion. Presence became an expression of love, not sentimental or conditional, but real and immediate, rooted in awareness and attention. Through this practice, she noticed a deepening of her spiritual insight. Presence revealed the impermanent and interconnected nature of all things. It highlighted the futility of clinging to outcomes, identities, or expectations. It allowed her to embrace life fully, without resistance, and to navigate challenges with clarity and grace. Each moment became a microcosm of awakening, an opportunity to embody the teachings she had learned over the years. She also saw how presence transformed her understanding of happiness and fulfillment. True contentment did not come from external circumstances, achievements, or possessions. It arose naturally when she was fully awake to the present moment, aware of the richness of life as it unfolded. Happiness and peace were not rewards for effort or endurance. They were inherent in the act of being present. As she walked back home that evening, she felt a sense of profound liberation. She was no longer tethered by fear of loss, attachment to identity, or clinging to outcomes. She moved through the world with clarity, grace, and an open heart. She had discovered the gift of presence, a living, breathing awareness that allowed her to engage fully with life, to extend compassion to others, and to find peace amidst the impermanent and ever-changing nature of existence. The woman understood, finally, that this gift was always available. It did not depend on circumstances, wealth, relationships, or achievements. It was not something to be earned or possessed. It was a simple, natural aspect of being awake, an invitation to live fully in each fleeting, miraculous moment. Sitting by her window that night, she watched the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Each star was small, distant, and impermanent in its light, yet together they formed a vast, interconnected expanse of beauty. She felt herself as part of this expanse, her awareness flowing in harmony with the universe. Presence, she realized, was the bridge between her inner life and the world around her, a means of inhabiting reality fully, lovingly, and awake. With a deep exhale, she smiled, feeling the fullness of life in that single moment. She had walked through loss and grief, cultivated awareness and compassion, embraced impermanence, and now had discovered the ultimate expression of awakening, the gift of presence. And in this gift, she found freedom. Freedom to live, to love, to grow, and to be fully, vividly alive. Here, now, in this remarkable, fleeting, and beautiful life. Presence, she knew, was the heart of awakening, the essence of peace, and the ultimate gift that life offers to those who can receive it. And she had received it, fully, completely, and gratefully.